So I know I'm not too big on YouTube. I literally have like 100 subscribers or something, and there's probably 5 people who are gonna end up watching this, but basically there was an incident over the weekend and I had a bunch of friends and just people asking like, what happened, like what's going on. And so I was like, I could just write a little thing on Instagram, but I feel like it'd be a lot easier to just film a video and talk than trying to write something out, because then I can give the full story in depth. But before I go into the story, I just want to say, like, if you don't know me, I'm Tiana. I lease a 17-1 or 17-2 liver chestnut off the track thoroughbred. His name is Marley. I've been leasing him since July and I've been riding him since I think April. I'm pretty sure. I'm just going off of what I was there for, what I saw, what I heard, what people told me, and give my best description of what happened, because I definitely don't know the entire full story totally in depth because I wasn't there for the whole time. Friday night, when they were turning the horses in, Marley wasn't really a big fan of walking through the snow. It was like deep in a certain part of his paddock and he wasn't really walking through it, and so they kind of had to like, come on, and then eventually he just walked through, so they didn't really think much of it. They turned him out Saturday morning, and same kind of thing, but it was a little bit worse. Like before, it was just like he wasn't really wanting to go through the snow, which is fair, but this time it was like he didn't really want to go to his paddock. He wasn't really walking very well, but apparently he was fine most of the day. And then Saturday evening he got turned out in again, and this time like he wouldn't move, like he just wouldn't walk through the snow like he didn't want to, and so they had to kind of like tap him and like kind of get a couple people to try to get him through the snow, and they're like, okay, this is really weird. And he wasn't really walking very well. What they did is they called a physiotherapist out, kind of massaging his legs and trying to figure out what was wrong, and apparently his right back leg was really swollen and pretty sensitive to the touch, and they didn't really know what was wrong. He was walking kind of okay, but his leg was just really swollen. Like it kind of looked like he dislocated his leg or something. I don't really know because it like flopped over. I have no clue. This is just what I heard, but I didn't want to listen to the entire thing because I was a mess. Sunday, it was decent enough that we could go out. So my friend was gonna pick me up around 10 o'clock and then we were gonna go to the barn. But like 10 to 10, my coach calls my mom and it's like, don't come to the barn. Like just don't come because there's something wrong with Marley. We don't really know what's wrong, but just we don't want a lot of people there. And I was like, okay, what the heck? And then probably about a half an hour to an hour later, my mom walks into my room and says that my coach had called her again and said we could come to the barn, and I was like, okay, great, like what's wrong? And then she's like, we're going, but we're going to say goodbye. And that, my heart just dropped. Hearing those words, I like sat there, I was like laying in bed and I was like staring at her and I'm like, are you serious? And she's like, yeah. And then I just started bawling, and I laid in my bed like for probably 15 minutes just crying until I was like, okay, I want to go see him. Basically she said like we couldn't come to the barn, they didn't want anybody coming until the vet had come out and we had figured out what was going on. So the vet had been out at this point and said like he needs to be put down. And so I was really upset. So we drive to the barn and I'm crying the entire way there, and then we get to the barn and I walk in and my coach is like, he's in that stall. So we stay in a stall for a while and my coach comes out, starts to explain exactly what the vet had said and what had gone on. So basically the vet had said that he had like potentially, they weren't 100% sure, but potentially he had dislocated his leg or like fractured his stifle and or like pulled a bunch of muscles and tendons and like just yuck, and said he was like in an inhumane amount of pain. He was on like a tranquilizer thing, so he was all doped up and so he wouldn't like freak out, because he was very, very sensitive to the touch, like extremely sensitive. Like even if you tried to lightly touch his leg, he would flip out. He was not having it. And he was also on bute and benamine, I think, were the two he was on. So he's on really strong painkillers and like tranquilizers, or I don't even know. I felt so bad. I was like standing in his stall and he was not his normal self. He just didn't know what was going on because he had all these drugs, which, I mean, fair. It's kind of scary. My coach was saying all that, and she said like he just needed to be put down, and apparently the physiotherapist who had came the night before had said pretty much the exact same thing. And so he was going to be put down as soon as the vet came. The vet said we had to put him down now. My coach is like, we can't put him down until Tiana gets out so she can say goodbye. And so the vet was like, okay. And then the vet had to go on another call, so she left before I got there. And I'm so incredibly glad that she left before I got there, because this would have had a completely different outcome if she had stayed longer. Basically, he has 2 owners, I guess. So basically there's this one lady who basically, like, I lease from her. She kind of like free leases him. I don't really know, but she pays for absolutely everything. And then he has an actual owner who's his owner on paper. So like legally his owner, but she doesn't pay for anything. So the vet's over here saying we have to put him down. Like, surgery's not going to do anything because it's like muscle and tendon and all this stuff, and ligaments. I don't really know. Whereas the physiotherapist was saying, I can fix him, like blah blah blah. So it was really, his owner was really like, that's a really hard, she's in a really difficult position. So then we kind of stood around for, oh my god, I don't even know, probably like an hour. And at that point it was like 1 o'clock and I was like, oh my god. Around that time, someone also went to go get the physiotherapist to bring her out, just to kind of figure out some more about what we were doing. So she came out again, and I stood there and I watched, and she was like barely touching his leg, and he would flip out, he would try to kick her. He was in so much pain, and I was like cringing as I was outside his stall. I was like, oh my god, I cannot, my poor baby. This kind of put his owner in a really difficult position, because she's like, I don't know what to do, like, I don't want to put him down. She couldn't afford for this lady to do the physiotherapy stuff on him and like his rehab over the next couple of months, because it's like a lot of money. She ended up going home, so she left and she said she could come back at around 3-ish if we wanted. Went and just quickly threw layers on it and then just came back to the barn, and we came back to the barn at like 3:15. His actual owner, so who owns him on paper, who legally owns him, she was called out. Like, her and her husband came out, because they're like, you have to consent to either him being put down or put through this physiotherapy. So I think we stood there for probably like half an hour, like talking, and people were asking like his legal owner, like, are you willing to put in like $5,000 for him to go through this physiotherapy stuff? And she's like, no, like, I can't. And like, nobody was blaming her, because she was in a really difficult position, because like she had a baby on the way and she just couldn't afford it. They want to keep him alive, but neither of them can afford it. I can't afford it. Nobody can afford it. 3 months for the physiotherapy, and it'd be anywhere from $10,000 to $15,000, which is a lot of money for something that could potentially not even work. Do we want to bring the physiotherapist back and so she can talk and do another session and just see? And we stood there for like half an hour, like going back and forth, but eventually one of the boarders went to go pick up the physiotherapist again and bring her, but this time everybody had to leave the barn except the 2 owners and the physiotherapist lady, just to bring some stress levels down. And we were sitting in one of the boarders' cars, just talking until we were able to go back and see him. And my mom and my sister at this point had decided to go home, and my coach ended up going home because she has like 2 little kids, so she left for a while. I don't even remember her coming back, but I remember she came back later, and I had no clue when she'd come back. I guess we completely missed her. But we sat in the truck for like about probably an hour and a half, honestly, and we were talking about like horse shows, and I'm like, oh, I don't know if I'm gonna have a horse. Yeah, it was really nice to sit and talk with them though, because they're so nice and they're just being super sweet. And it was just super nice to have them there and be able to have a normal conversation. So I would kind of keep my mind off Marley for the time being. Probably near 5 o'clock at this point, because we're like, oh, the horses have to come in, like, we can't bring them in yet. So then the physiotherapist lady comes out like probably 10-15 minutes later, and we're like, oh, like, did you finish already? And she's like, no, and said that this other vet was called. So now there have been 2 vets and a physiotherapist that have come out to see him, and they still aren't 100% sure on what happened or what was going on. Basically, what they thought had happened is he had cast in his stall. So basically he had laid down and then probably like got stuck in the corner, and then he couldn't get out, so he's just like wheeling all over the place and like trying to get up and get out, and probably pulled his leg. So we all go back into the barn. I'll stand in the tack room for a while and just kind of wait it out while the second vet is kind of looking over him. And my coach shows up, like I said, out of nowhere. I don't know how she even showed. I don't even know. We didn't even see her come. We didn't even see the vet come. I don't even know. His legal owner's husband called this other vet because they're really good friends. And so he called him out as a favor. And so he basically came out for free. And it was like, all right, we'll get a third opinion. It's fine. Like, any other options would be great. After a while, he's like, okay, we could do an x-ray just to see if there are any fractures. If he had a fracture, it would be no question. Like, he would have to be put down. Like, oh, that can make like his owner's decision a little bit easier, because she was a complete mess. I hadn't talked. I don't know if I probably said a total of like 20 words that entire day. I did not talk a lot. when I'm in those situations, I kind of just shut down. That I was gonna pass out. I hadn't really eaten anything. I was sick already then, so it was a lot harder. I had to leave the barn because I'm under 19, so I can't be with the x-rays, you know. And so we waited for about 15 minutes. I don't really know. That doesn't really matter. I didn't even know what time it was at this point. It was probably like 5:36-ish. And we come back and he shows us the x-rays and he's like, there's no fracture. There's no fracture. Like, there's nothing. And hairline fractures could take, like, I think he said like 72 hours for it to show up on the x-ray. But he said from what he could tell, it didn't look like a fracture, didn't seem like a fracture. And also, even though it was an x-ray, you could kind of see that, like, the muscle didn't seem to be damaged at all, even though he couldn't really tell from the x-ray. But so he said it was either soft tissue damage or cellulitis. Basically, he said he wouldn't put the horse down until they did an ultrasound to see if it actually was like soft tissue or anything like that. The ultrasound would take a couple hours, and because it was like almost 6 o'clock at this point, I believe, he was like, okay, I can't do it. I can't do it now. I'll have to come back tomorrow or the day after to do it. And he said, but while I'm here, I can do a quick blood test to rule out cellulitis. They did the blood test. Took about 10-15 minutes, and then we looked at the little box thing and it had numbers, and the number said like 618. So his owner was like, okay, what does this mean? And so the vet comes over, picks up the box, looks at the numbers, there, that's cellulitis. Because apparently blood testing will show something about white blood cells and like protein, I don't really know. And if it's in with a certain number, like cellulitis is like a certain number. If it was like soft tissue, it would have been a different set of numbers or something. I don't really know. But cellulitis is a very specific set of numbers. And apparently he was like right in the middle or something. Like he was in one of those numbers that the vet was like 99% sure that it was cellulitis. Everybody was kind of happy, but not like celebrating like, ooh, so I wasn't really sure what was going on. He explained it multiple times. So basically, if you don't know what cellulitis is, it's a bacterial infection that gets in through like a cut or something, and it'll go into the bloodstream, and it can be really, really fatal. An infection. It's not damage. And apparently, he fit a lot of the signs. By this point, he was putting weight on his foot. He was putting weight on his leg. He could walk. But he was very, very, very sensitive to the touch. Like, a huge symptom of cellulitis, but the reason that nobody thought it is he didn't have a fever in the morning. And so we're kind of standing around, kind of talking a little bit, and my coach is like, to me, she's like, oh, why aren't you celebrating? Like, I thought you'd be happier. And then I was like, I stood there and I looked at her and I was like, I don't really know what's going on right now. Like, what's happening? So she turns to me and she said, basically, he could be good to go in a couple weeks. Like, he will probably be ready to work before our ring is ready to use, because there's like a foot of snow. And hearing that, I just like, I kind of started laughing, and then I started crying, and one of like the other boarders, she like hugged me, and my coach hugged me, and she's like, I'm so sorry, I didn't really tell you what was going on. And so then the vet prescribed some antibiotics, and they gave him more bute, and yeah, I didn't actually leave the barn until probably around 7:30. Which is kind of crazy. We were there for so long. Oh my god. Monday, my coach had went in the morning to give him bute, and she messaged me and she was like, hey, he's looking a lot better. He's putting like full weight on his leg. He's not 100% out of the woods yet, but looking very well and going and seeming to be feeling a lot better. And I was like, oh my god, thank the Lord. So then around noon, I think, I don't really know, 11 or noon, I went to go see him, and I was there for probably an hour to 2 hours, and I just hung out with him in his stall. I just like sat in his stall, and I played music, and I just like pet him and gave him food, and he was walking around in his stall fine. He was like circling around. He's kind of like hopping around too, because he just wanted to go outside so bad. Like, all of his friends were outside. He's like, let me out, let me out. And I felt so bad, but I walked him down the barn aisle, and he was perfectly fine. He felt fine. And then his owner went in the evening to give him his antibiotics, and apparently he was also pretty good. And then yesterday, so Wednesday, yeah, the vet was out again in the morning. So he did have a fever, and the swelling was a little bit more than he wanted it to be, so we prescribed some new antibiotics, gave more bute, and yeah, but now he's allowed to go walks around the driveway. I guess it's cleared now. I don't really know. And he could go in a paddock, but our paddocks are covered in snow. The ring is covered in snow. The round pen's covered in snow. So poor man has stayed in stall, but we're going out as often as we can to walk him. The vet's coming out again tomorrow, I believe, to kind of try out some new antibiotics and just kind of see and kind of play around with them. And we know how to treat it and fix it, and other horses in the barn have had cellulitis before. So that's kind of why I wanted to make this video, is to kind of explain that. And I know like nobody knows what's going on because I posted on my Snapchat story and I have 30 people on Snapchat. So I'd probably like 10 people message me, be like, what the heck happened? Just for anybody else, so I can kind of explain what the rest of the year is gonna look like. Because if Marley is better, because apparently he said like better by the end of the month, so like in a week or two. And if he is, we could probably go straight to work as soon as the ring is cleared. Then we're gonna watch him and be very, very, very careful and clean all his wounds out very well. And he's gonna be bubble wrapped essentially. If he progresses and he's good, then I'll probably carry on the year as planned. Probably go to the shows that were gonna be planned as well. And yeah, honestly, just go by how he's feeling and how I'm feeling. And yeah, I paid for my 3-day lease and I've ridden once maybe. So I am so out of shape. Marley's gonna stay in the stall and get fat hopefully the next week. And I'll try to keep the peoples updated if anything changes, or if he gets better, or if there's any solid plans in the making. But aside from that, thanks for watching, and if you have any other questions, feel free to message me on Instagram. It was a lot of emotions flying around all over the place and really just took a toll on me and everybody else, but he seems to be doing better, and that's all we can really ask for. Well, I just want him to feel better, and I don't want him to be in pain, and this sucks, and oh my god, and now he's had it once, he's more prone to get it again, so you know, I'm gonna be like very overprotective and literally gonna bubble wrap him. So yeah, so thanks for watching. Bye.